Hi everyone, as Paige said, my name is Aya. I work for Fossil Free Eugene. Fossil Free Eugene is a coalition of grassroots organizations that are working to be accountable to its climate goals set in the Climate Recovery Act, and also to facilitate a just transition to renewable energy. And much of our current work centers on change at the city level, specifically advocating for new construction to be built all electric, but we know a lot of folks are really concerned and interested in what changes they can make in their homes now. And so that's kind of where this workshop came from. The Just Transition Workshop series seeks to start filling the gap, providing resources and tools to educate community members, specifically from, as Paige said, historically marginalized groups, and renters to empower participants to ensure their homes are healthier and more efficient. So weatherization is a critical first step in this, and a great way that you can update your home with options for both homeowners and renters, which we'll be talking about both today. In its basic sense, weatherization refers to measures which better protect homes from the elements, like filling gaps and adding insulation. And our presenters will go over this in more detail, but I wanted to go over a few slides to talk about how this connects to justice and equity. Okay, so first I just wanted to start off with this graph. I think it's a helpful visual to see how your typical home uses electricity or uses their energy. And as you can see, the vast majority of energy use is used for heating and cooling, if that's air or water. And so when we look at ways to make your home more efficient, it is a really significant way that you can cut your emissions and decrease your utility bills if you're making sure that the heating and cooling that you are generating is staying within your home. So, as folks may have noticed, the cost of heating and cooling our homes has been up recently, and it's not just because of inflation. Rate hikes are increasing gas bills about 42% over the last 13 months, which is pretty dramatic. The term energy burden refers to, as it says up here, the percentage of gross household income that is spent on energy costs. And low-income households typically spend a larger portion of their monthly income on electricity, gas, and heating. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, the national average energy burden for low-income houses is around 10% or more, which is about 3 times higher than households above the low-income threshold, estimated at 3.5. And in some areas, energy burden can be as high as 30%. So the people who are making the least amount of money are paying the most on their utility bills, which is silly. So, why is this the case? And I know our presenters will probably go over this in more detail, but because low-income and historically marginalized groups are more likely to live in housing that is deemed not adequate. According to U.S. Census data, low-income households make up 37% of respondents, but represent more than half, or 56% of households with inadequate housing conditions. So this, among other things, can mean that a house may not be well insulated, there may be gaps, there may be other things that cause the houses to leak heat, therefore requiring more energy to heat or cool. So adding insult to injury, low-income households have the least access to energy-efficient appliances or other clean energy technologies, such as heat pumps, which both heat and cool homes. And as we know, in Oregon, the summer heat waves that we are now experiencing require cooling. In a lot of cases, heat-related deaths are going up. It is dangerous not to be able to regulate the temperature in your homes as the climate is changing. So, Oregon state agencies estimate that energy efficiency improvements, such as improving heating and cooling and weatherization in homes, can save $113 million a year in utility costs for low-income households. So weatherization is a great tool to help folks lower their emissions and reduce energy burden. But I want to turn it over to the experts, so I'll hand it over to Charlie.
So I'm Charlie. I work with the EWEB. I've been there since 2001. Before that, I was with Springfield Utility Board. I'm a Springfield boy, a Lake County boy. I grew up here since 1966. When we talk, I do a lot of these educational profiles, I do a lot of energy education, so we tend to look at the house as a system. And so there's a lot of interactions. We've got some moisture control, we've got structural systems, trusses, walls, headers, blah, blah, blah. Occupants' behavior. When we talk about the thermal envelope, we're talking about the exterior, the outside, okay? As well as windows, floors, and attics, plug loads, heating system, appliances, lighting. Thank you. And so a little bit different graph than what you just saw, but kind of along the same vein. In our climate zone, west of the Cascades, probably in the wintertime, you're looking at close to 50% of your utility bill, whether it's gas or electric or whatever, wood, oil, whatever you're paying to heat your house. About 50% of your utilities consumption is going to be heating. Just a little bit less than 25% for water heating, again, depending upon occupancy, how many people, what kind of hot water load you have. These are just rough numbers. Plug loads have become a huge deal. They weren't like this when I got into it in the 90s. Most people didn't have iPhones in the 90s. They didn't have laptops, et cetera, and then lighting. And cooling is mixed in here somewhere as well, but cooling in our zone, it has gotten warmer, but it's still a relatively thin slice of your overall utilities year round. And so when we take a look at that, again, I'm looking at this from the heating side and the water heating side primarily. Then we can start breaking out the house as a system. Walls are a big loss and thermal loss. This is a heat loss for a home. This is close to 11,000 BTUs per hour, okay? And that's kind of a low home, in all honesty. But we're right around 37% of the walls. The other one, the largest other area, which you might imagine, which is a hole in the wall covered by glass, and there's a window at 19%. Doors, and then we have infiltration. This is leaks to the house. Ceiling and floor account for about another 10% apiece for about 20%. So let's give us an idea how to attack the home in terms of the thermal envelope. Go ahead and see if we can get another slide in there. So, so the idea here is to concentrate your efforts where you get the biggest bang for your buck. I'll just kind of condense this slide for you. That's basically what we're talking about. In most homes, the low-hanging fruit is not going to be a new expensive $20,000 heat pump system or better. It's going to be insulating your walls and insulating your floors and attics. Insulation, maybe new windows if you've got single pane windows, or something. And that's the one I'll get into the do-it-yourself or stuff, I believe. There's some other things you can do with existing windows. And also taking a look at air barriers, penetrations, air that's leaking into the house, for lack of a better term. So you're looking at this from the terms of a thermal plane, a thermal envelope, and an air barrier. Now, I want to be real careful about this. Insulation, the fiberglass insulation, or which is most common now, or vermiculite, or cellulose, is a thermal barrier, it's not an air barrier. The fact that you have insulation creates a thermal barrier, but it doesn't do anything for the holes that are in there, right? Air still comes in and out of it. So I want to be real clear about that. Can we go to the next slide? So this is kind of where I was going with it. The thermal barrier slows the heat loss, the conductive loss, the holes in the wall, eliminating those are the floor or the attic. Eliminate infiltration, air leakage, right? So this is just a kind of an example. We use infrared imaging. It's really come down in cost, but this shows you, this is this area over this window right here. You can see the heat loss coming out through the infrared technology. There's some insulation in that, right? That's a place, and the one thing to remember about heat energy, I'm speaking about heat energy moves to where it doesn't exist. So every bit of the heat that's in this building is trying to pass through this wall to this window, and this building is trying to come to a thermal equilibrium with the outside. And so this is where some significant heat loss is going on, as outlaid by the camera here, right? Go ahead. And so, the easiest way to deal with that is insulation. And the way you deal with insulation in the wall is we literally, depending upon the wall components, the exterior wall components, we pull the siding off. Slab siding that comes off, they tack it back up. They drill holes in the wall and they fill it up with insulation. Okay. Floor insulation is the same thing. Floor insulation is really unique in this perspective. If you're insulating something, it has to be in contact with that thermal barrier for it to work. So if you crawl underneath your house, or like me, you do the flashlight thing, you look up, and you see your insulation bowing in the floor, it's probably not doing what it's designed to do. You've got an air gap in there and it's not insulated because it's not touching the subfloor. Resupport it, lath, twine, whatever you got to resupport it. I'm trying not to step on your toes and do it yourselves too much. So this slide is indicative of what we're talking about with air barriers, and this is a great example of where you'll find it. Look, every house has holes. Everywhere. Brand new homes have holes. Not uncommon, even with forced air systems, to see this penetration that comes to the wall for your line set and condensate lines. Sometimes they don't foam, but there's a hole in the wall, right? So cold air comes in. There's some other stuff, but the idea here is that you've got cold air going up. And I just talked about heat energy, but what does warm air do? It rises, right? So this is a great example of a stack effect. You're pulling in cold air, you're paying to heat it up, and then it goes right up in your attic through these penetrations, fan penetrations, duct penetrations, lighting penetrations. This is a good slide for talking about where the leaks are at. First thing I do, I get a lot of high bill calls this time of the year. It's the other thing to understand, when it gets cold, your heating bill goes up, right? That's based on temperature difference, what we call delta T. It takes more energy the larger that difference is to keep your house at 68 or 70 what you're heating to. When I walk into homes, the first place I go and look is if they have a fireplace. I shut my flashlight up there. There's a penetration that if you don't close that damper, that's a hole this big in your house. Okay, I'm just going to toss this out. There's a little bit of energy. Fireplaces are a terrible way to heat your house. Okay, but they're great for having a glass of wine on a Friday night with your spouse or your significant other when the kids are gone. I'm not the Nazi about that stuff, but recognize this: that as the fireplace is heating up, it's pulling warm air out of the house. It gets to a point where it's finally actually putting out a little heat, and then it dies down. Nobody can close the damper while it's dying down without dying, or waking up with a very big face and a headache. So don't try to heat your house with that. Okay, it just won't work. Stoves, inserts are a little bit different thing, obviously, but fireplaces, even with sealed glass doors, please don't heat your house with them. Anyway, that's my little Gestapo brown shirt. Think about heat loss. Plumbing penetrations, these are very common. If you take a look, you can probably feel it on a cold day. Standing in front of your sink, you can feel the cold air coming in through the heat. Don't be surprised, that drain penetration is going down there, it's not foamed. It's not gasketed, there's nothing there. Same with toilets, any drain penetration at all, sinks, toilets. Water lines for refrigerators, water lines for washing machines. Doors, threshold kits, anytime you can see daylight through a door. Weather stripping, I think there's some stuff back there for that. Weather stripping, threshold kits. Okay, these are all available at any of your, I gotta be careful how I say this, it's your local retailers, Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart, blah, blah, blah. They're all there. Fans and vents, just the penetration through the ceiling is probably the first place that you'll see a hole. They're not foamed, they're not gasketed, they're there. The other thing is that exhaust fans should have a butterfly damper in them, so that the only time they're open is when the fan's running. I used to live in a house where you could hear that thing popping up and down when it was windy. I lived in another house that didn't have one at all, so I needed cooking and you feel cold air on them, they come running down. Those are things to take a look at as well. Outlets, switch plate covers on exterior walls. There's one down here for those that you can't see. You put your hand on it right now, you can feel it's conducting cold. On a windy day, you'll probably feel a breeze. They make gasket covers. I have some back here as well that you can take a look at. They're just a little styrofoam gasket. You pull the switch plate cover off, put it on, screw it back on. And then floor, ceiling, the wall. Again, these are plumbing penetrations. Excuse me. Romex electrical wiring penetrations. Okay, none of them are foam. I mean, unless you do it yourself. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. And the other thing I should mention is, don't forget the penetrations to the garage. You can get nasty carbon monoxide from that. This is the stack effect. This is a great slide. You probably can't see it too well, but this is a building that's got a lot of leaks. On the lower levels where the air is cooler, it's pulling in air. As it warms up, it's literally, you can see this is, probably can't see it from where you're at. This is collapsing and this is expanding. That air is coming in, heating up, and getting expelled out of the building through leaks. This is what they call neutral pressure plane. Probably somewhere where no human actually exists between levels. Can we go one more? This is an example of these leaks using foam. It doesn't have to be this elaborate. You can buy a can of polyexpanding foam in any hardware store, fill it up. If you don't like it bubbling and all this stuff, if you're really meticulous, you can come back and get straight with the razor blade. My wife asked me to do that. She was crazy when I did it. Again, this is probably a recessed can, something along that line. I would suggest just changing them out. Sometimes doing this kind of stuff can overheat the can and create some hazards. More of the same stuff. This is ductwork leaks too. This is building some cans, some fiberboard cans over recessed lighting to keep it from leaking, but also to keep insulation from going in there when they blow this attic to re-insulate it. The pink fuzzy stuff makes you itch, insulates your house. Moving on to the next slide. This is a pretty good floor. This is a great quote. In our climate, 40% of the air that you're breathing probably originates in your crawl space. You're breathing it through those penetrations. This is a duct line through here. A lot of times you can see duct leakage on the seams where they're met because you'll see staining because they're leaking right at the unions of the joints of the ductwork. This is great. This is an example again. Switch plate cover. You can see, right? This is some wall area. Believe that's a window portion right here. Portion of that's the header. You can't insulate it, but that's where it's at. Yeah, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. I'm not sure where we're at. Common leaks. Just about anything you can think of, but there's a list of it there. Cantilever doors, pocket doors leak like a sieve to the attic and the crawl space. Fireplace walls. They built the framing around the fireplace flue in the attic that should be filled up. Here's a great example of what I was talking about with the fireplace. It's the chimney up in the attic. It's not sealed. In that place, your attic and your house are communicating. Okay. I think we've gone pretty much through the slides. Yeah, let's go ahead and kill this. So, anyway, I'm trying to get through this without boring you to tears. EWEB, in Lane County, we're blessed that all the utilities here are public utilities. Springfield Utility Board, Emerald Peoples Utility District, EPUD, Lane Blatchley, Lane Co-op, and EWEB, Eugene Water and Electric Board. We all offer conservation programs, energy management programs for electrically heated homes, because we're the electric utility. Now, don't pay attention to that slide. I've got a list of stuff back here. I've brought a EWEB program, a one-page of all of our EWEB programs. But if you're electrically heated, we offer insulation, window programs, and air sealing programs, and heating programs, ductless heat pumps and ducted heat pumps. Rebates, zero interest loans. In an effort to also move away from gas homes, we offer rebates and zero interest loans for gas or oil heating homes to go electric, to go into electric heating systems. Once you have that electric heating system in your home, now you're qualified for the weatherization zone. We have income-based programs for electrically heated homes. We institute the God known as Vulnerable Housing Administration, and they help reimburse our low-income program, our limited income program. Our limited income programs are based on 200% of federal poverty guideline or 60% of median income. They're pretty interchangeable for the most part. We offer for both. In that program, we will insulate your house for free. We go through an income qualification program, but we will insulate the house for free based on the lowest quote of 2 quotes. We offer up to $3,800 to put in ductless heat pumps or ducted heat pumps. They cost more than that, but we still take a big chunk out of it, and zero interest loan money and grants can be used together. And we will pay a percentage of window replacement for homes that have single pane windows. We will offer up to $20 a square foot for windows. The square foot of window looking like this, right? That's roughly a 2040 times $20. 8 square feet, $160. Right around there.
Well, thank you all for coming. I'm Esteban Montero. I actually am the Energy Services Director at Homes for Good. That's my regular job. I also do comedy, so thank you for coming to my Netflix special. And at the end, so it's good. Anyway, I'm going to give you a little workshop, very similar, or we're going to talk about similar things. You can be tired of hearing the same thing over and over. Sorry. It does make sense, and that's why we agree on a lot of the same numbers. So, Homes for Good. We have 3 main programs at Energy Services, and those are weatherization, heat systems crisis, and energy education. I'm going to talk about the 3 programs first, and then we'll do a little bit of a workshop on do it yourself. So, oops, I wouldn't want too many. So the program, our biggest program is that weatherization program. Eligibility, again, that's 200% federal poverty line, like Charlie was saying. We pretty much all work with federal grants, so we have to meet these federal standards. All the work that we do eventually will be monitored, will be seen, so we have to adhere to this. You have to be a Lane County resident, owner, renter, it doesn't matter. You have to sign an agreement with us, of course, and then home has to be free of structural damage. And what that means is that we don't really do repairs, right? And that's where it gets kind of complicated. We can do weatherization, but not repairs, except for some small things that we call health and safety that might be related directly with that. Some small leaks and things like that. Anyway, the measures, just what Charlie was talking, things we do are insulation, door, walls, air seal, all of that foaming things that Charlie was sharing with you. We do all of that. HVAC system, some health and safety, and that's why I have an asterisk. Windows, depends on if you have a single pane window or not, we're allowed to do it or not. And in some cases, we give you a new refrigerator, Energy Star appliances, sometimes even a washer, so that's great. The program is absolutely free, so this is no cost, but the downside is we have a really long wait list. And with COVID and with supply chain issues, it's taking a little longer to be able to finish. So, you can go visit us online at homesforgood.org and sign up. I recommend you do, but it's going to take us a while to get there. Now, the next program is Heat Crisis Program, and that's actually only a like a seasonal program that is running right now. And the only thing we do with this really is if somebody's permanent heating breaks, and we're allowed to go there and fix it or replace it in some case, even upgrade it, right? In some cases we go there and what they have is old baseboard electric heating, it broke. We were able to go to DHP right away, sign you up for the weatherization. Eventually when we get there, you'll be set and you have a much better unit. DHP is a ductless heat pump. By the way, those are the little split units that you see on the wall. So we're allowed to do some of those thanks to programs like Charlie and some funding with them. Our last program, or our last thing we do is energy education. We do like client direct education, we call it, and that's when we go to the home. And when we're going to assess the home to see what we're going to weatherize and what we're allowed to do in that home, we talk to the clients the same way that Charlie kind of did right now. This is everything that we see going on. This is all the things you can do yourself to save some energy. And we do some equipment demonstration at that point. We do also give them some written materials and other things like that. We also do, as part of that, some community events. So things like we're doing right now. We come right here to a workshop, talk to different folks. Sometimes we are able to bring some props. I wasn't able to get my hands on this one prop that we use sometimes, which is we call it a little glass house. It is literally a house made of plastic glass. We're able to demonstrate a lot of these things, and people can see it, and it's fun. So sorry I couldn't get my hands on that one this time. All right, so we're going to jump into again what the main program is, and that is the DOE Weatherization Assistance Program, and that's the Department of Energy Weatherization Assistance Program. So, like Charlie said, what we do is see the house as a system, but we break it down into system of systems. So that is the mechanical, the building shell, and then the health and safety aspect of it. So again, we will do everything having to do with the mechanical system, so that's your water heating, your HVAC system, the insulation, the leaks in your duct, which is a big deal. The building shell is what Charlie was explaining before, right? Is that thermal boundary, everything that keeps your house protected from the outside elements. So you make sure there again that we insulate, that we air seal, that we replace windows or repair them when we are allowed to or we are able to, and then some minor roof leaks again. That's tricky because in some cases we are able to replace an entire roof, right? There are actually people who live in mobile homes that have the old flat roofs, and some of those roofs we're allowed to replace the entire thing. In some cases we can do it. In many other cases we're only allowed to repair small leaks and things that will affect the work that we do or compromise our work. So we're not going to go do any weatherization if there's those leaks, and hence we're allowed to fix them. All right, so why do it, right? What are the benefits? So you'll get energy savings, of course, water savings, lower out-of-pocket health costs, and lower interest payments. Well, in some cases there's no interest payments, like Charlie was saying, but some folks do get into debt trying to figure out a way to weatherize their home or be more energy efficient. And so through the Weatherization Assistance Program that was born in the 1970s, was it 76? I don't remember the exact year, but the DOE program was born somewhere around there. And so the idea is to help folks, low-income families, to not have to pay for that bill to save. But there's also a whole set of other benefits there. That is like 8,500 jobs actually that are generated from this. There is a total of about 35,000 homes that don't have that there. That all comes from the 2021 DOE Weatherization Assistance fact sheet. So about 35,000 homes served every year. So that's a lot nationwide. There's also an average annual energy cost savings, so that's to the families themselves of about $283. And there are some other benefits as well that I'll talk about, right? For every dollar that we invest, there's about $1.72 that you recoup or that you'll get back in energy-related savings, and about $2.78 that you get back or that you'll benefit from that are not necessarily directly. And what do I mean by that is this: it's a community impact, right? So the burden that, gosh, I forgot, Aya was talking about before, right? This is from 2021, that's where that's at, right? So that is the percentage of your gross income that you're spending in energy. And for people who were below the 200% poverty line at that moment in 2021, they measured the average of 13.9, which is, yes, almost 4 times actually what the rest of the population is, which was about 3.5%. So with this program and the dollars that we all put into this, what we are able to do is, again, give you some savings for yourself and improve your health and safety. So we have health and safety related benefits over there in the corner of about $14,148, and that means no out-of-pocket expenses for missing days of work, right? Because now you live in a nice, comfortable, warm home. That is also not, not missing the days, not having the out-of-pocket expense. That was actually determined to be about $514 direct cost of just like out-of-pocket, health expenses, according to this study that they did. And I have that on my notes. I don't remember exactly at the top of my head. It's the Oak Ridge Laboratory, or Oak Ridge National Laboratory study. I can get to that in one minute. Anyway, those are the benefits behind or above that. So now, you all learn much, much better when it's humorous. So I got a little laugh for you, because that way you'll memorize some of this, and I'm going to give you a lot more facts. So let's jump right in. We all keep talking about energy, right? And energy this and energy that, but it's sometimes hard. Like, what is energy? How do we measure energy? It's not a pound, right? We don't measure it that way. Well, we measure it in kilowatt hours. And bills can be complicated. That one right there is straight out of EWEB, and it's like, what am I looking at, right? Can be very complicated. You look at it and you try to figure out, well, what do I owe? What am I paying for, right? What is going on here? So, pay for kilowatt hours, it's called. And like Charlie said, there's many things that can affect that, because heating and cooling is what actually affects your utility the most. When the temperature outside is really, really cold, depending on how many days you're being billed for, that's how you're going to see your bill change. So I'm going to let Charlie some other thing running through that one. I'll put it in there. I'll tell you a quick calculation. This is kind of what we do then when we go to your house and we're trying to do weatherization, and you can do it yourself too, right? Try to understand. There's actually a very small tool that they sell. It's called Kilowatt, like K-I-L-L, and then dash A, and then W-A-T-T, kilowatt. You plug it into your wall, and then you plug a device to it, and then it starts telling you. You plug it in for, say, 24 hours, and it'll tell you this is how much that device used. And you can start, measuring through your house, well, where am I using my energy? What is using my energy? And your energy is basically that. It's whatever the appliance uses, in average, times the amount of time that you use, that is your kilowatt hour. So in other words, if you have an old fridge like that one that uses 0.19, could have rounded up. I know that's no fun, so we want to do some hard math. That's the idea. So that times the 24 hours, you get about 4.66 kilowatt hours in one day. So that means that 4.66 kilowatt hours times 365 days in a year times 11 cents that a kilowatt hour will cost you average. This fridge is costing you $187 a year. So if you have one of those and you're like, I'm going to put it in the garage now that I got a new one, well, that's how much you're paying a year just for having it there, right? And sometimes we got to think about those pieces. So updating or upgrading to an Energy Star refrigerator also will cost you about half of this, maybe even a little less. So now we're talking you're saving $90 a year, which can be a big, big difference. So where does the energy go? Already my colleagues have kind of seen all this, and we have very similar numbers, right? Space heating, we actually have measured that is about 35 to 60%. Like Charlie said, this time of year, 40 to 50%. Water heating, 225, the refrigeration, the light. What kind of things can be done to that? It's what we're going to jump into on the next slide. So let's look at that way. Space heating. We'll look at that first. So some of the tips that I had for space heating overall is just number one, dress for the weather, right? That sounds like really silly, but it happens a lot. We walk into somebody's house and say, my house is cold all the time. Well, it's 35 degrees outside, and they're wearing a t-shirt and shorts and flip-flops. You're like, well, sweater will go a long way too, It will help you a lot of money. It's a lot cheaper than anything else. Then the room temperature, we always recommend setting it at 68 degrees in the winter, and then there's something that is called a setback, which if you have a programmable thermostat, you can do this, and that's just, program it to go down to 58 Fahrenheit while you're sleeping. You can look this up too, but you sleep better when the temperature is a little colder, so you'll get better rest, you'll be under the blankets, you'll be fine, Believe it or not, just setting it back a little bit will save you a lot of energy. The only caveat there is if you have a heat pump already, you never want to set back more than 3 degrees on your thermostat, and that's because the heat pump then will kick into into emergency heating, and that's going to use a lot more energy. So we don't want to do that. You never set back more than 3 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, DIY alternatives are things that you can do yourself or with very low cost is the weather stripping, which there's some right there, and that is what Charlie touched based on before. That is your doors, making sure that you weather strip your doors, bottom, any place where you see or feel the cold air coming in or hot air escaping. Is really, if we have to talk about it from a scientific perspective, right, what we're losing is actually heat. The heat is what's transferring out. So the heat is leaving. So sealing any infiltrations, all the plumbing. I love doing this test for people. We use, infrared cameras as well. We always just go and open right under the sink. And like Charlie said, you'll have a 3.5-inch pipe that the plumber decided to make a 6-inch hole for. So you have a really big hole there where all this air is coming in, and all you gotta do is open it and stand there for a minute, and you can even grab a toothpick and attach a very, very tiny piece of like cellophane paper or something like that, very light, and you go put it right there. You can actually see it wiggle and move from the cold air coming in. And that's a very simple way. You can use that simple tool around windows, around any place where you think, hey, am I losing heat here? Is cold air coming in? And then spray foam, just that spray foam can that you can buy at any local hardware store is one of the best ways to do that. Make sure that you clean and replace your filters, and make sure you take your filters out of the plastic bag before you put it in. It's a very important one. Sorry, I have to just put that one in there because I've seen it. So make sure you take the filter out of the plastic bag first, then you put it in there and keep it nice and clean, because that'll save a lot of money. If it doesn't restrict the air flowing through, you're saving money and energy. Finally, sealing and underfloor insulation. That is probably, if you're able to afford, get a program, hire somebody to help you out. The best bang for your buck is going to be making sure that you insulate under your floor and that you insulate your ceiling. If you are able to do the spray foam yourself and then insulate those two, you will save a lot. Like, it will be a reasonable amount every year that you'll notice savings. All right. Next is water heating. And tips for water heating are use cold water for the laundry. You really hardly ever need hot water unless you happen to be crawling under crawl space, like me sometimes. Then you need it, but otherwise, almost anything you can do with just cold water washing. Take a shower instead of a bath, and while you're at it, make it a shorter shower. And that way you're saving also some. Make sure that you only wash full loads of dishes when you do your laundry, also only a full load. And then some DIY things or low-cost alternatives would be, number one, you check your temperature setting. Your water heater should not be any higher than 120 Fahrenheit. Any more than that is just costing you energy to keep that water hot there all the time, and you have to mix it with cold anyway. So 120 would be the recommendation. If you're able to insulate it, they sell this foam, looks like pool noodles, right? Like a foam pool noodle. Those go all over the pipes, the hot water pipes, especially the ones that are going to be on your floor again. If you're able to insulate all those, that'll make a huge, huge difference. I don't remember now off the top of my head, but it's something like 80% or 3/4 of the water, the calls for hot water in a home never actually get to the hot water. So like, imagine that every time that you go and open both faucets to wash your hands, you come out of the bathroom and you do that, you end up doing it with cold water anyway, because you don't sit there. But you called that hot water. It came from the tank, it got all the way through the pipe, it just never made it all the way there, and the pipe was so cold, you lost all that energy. And then you'll lose it again next time. So like, washing with only cold water, or if you need the hot water, just let's make sure we insulate all those pipes, and then you won't lose that water and that energy. Installing low flow faucets and showers, or shower heads and the sink, and then upgrade to a heat pump water heater. If you're able to do that, that would be a huge, huge difference. Again, heat pump technology, this refrigeration technology is about 3.2 times more efficient than regular electric water heaters. So it'll make a big difference in your utility bill. Jump to one more, refrigeration. So not a whole lot can be done, but keeping your refrigerator full, even though it sounds kind of strange, is actually better for your energy. All those things stay cold and help each other to stay cold and absorb the heat better. Please don't leave the door open. We see this sometimes too. People will literally just open the door and say, all right, I'm gonna go to the car and get groceries at the car, and then they're walking in, and the fridge is open and it's ready for me to put them in. You're wasting a lot of energy on those moves. Some DIY, there's not really a whole lot that can be done other than trying to buy an Energy Star appliance, and I would recommend that if you are able to do that, get a rebate or some other help. Please don't put the old one in the garage, because again, it will cost you some $200 a year to keep it there for no good reason, so you're not really going to save any at the end. So that's a lot of the things we see. All right, lighting and plug loads. We talked about this too. Plug loads now has become a huge deal. People have a lot of devices and all these things plugged in. There is something that we call the vampire loads. So you don't realize that all your things that are on standby, so that's TVs, computers, tablets, they're still sucking energy when they're at standby. Some of those TVs, we have actually measured them, and they still are using 60, 70% of the energy they use as if they were on. So that's still a lot. It's better just unplug it. There are some things that you might not want to do that, especially if they require your login and all of that stuff, right? And you're like, yeah, I'm gonna have to do that again. You can justify it. But there's some things that are called a smart power strip. And those can actually know or detect when your TV is on, for example, and then they'll power all the rest of the strip, which means your cable box, your DVD player, all the rest of the things that go in that same stand, right, for you to watch TV. And then when you turn the TV off, the strip knows it's off, so it kills the power from everything else. It just says, all right, you guys don't need to be on standby mode, and you can save all that electricity. So that's a good, easy way to do that. If you're able to, installing vacancy and occupancy sensors, that is a great way to do it. So those are the ones that when you walk in the room, the light will go on by itself. And if you have kids, or live with kids, or have anything to do with kids, they never turn the lights off, or fans off for that matter. So like in my house, I have some of those vacancy sensors in the fans in the bathroom. So you get out of the shower, it's still steamy, you want it to keep running, but we all forget. So we walk out of the bathroom and forget. Well, I have mine set up so that it runs for 15 minutes. If nobody walks in there, triggers the sensor, it'll just shut off by itself 15 minutes later. So you dealt with the humidity and you didn't waste all that energy and don't have to remember. So that's another quick, easy way to do that. So in summary, small changes, they can save money, they can make a lot of savings. Keeping doors closed, setting the thermostat at 68 degrees. Something happened in my presentation there. Well, affordable upgrades. Some utilities have rebates. Like I said, Charlie has rebates for your water heaters, for example, so that they're heat pump water heaters. And that is a really, really big change. And being able to do some of those upgrades yourself, focusing number one, I would say, on your envelope, so that would be on making sure you're not losing any of your heat through all the air infiltrations. So a little can of spray foam will go a long way, and then the insulation under the floor and the ceiling would be the most important ones if possible, and those are some that you might be able to tackle yourself if you're comfortable enough, or at least it won't cost you, it won't break your bank account if you have to hire somebody to do it. Area for counts, everything you do matters towards it. You matter, in fact, unless you multiply yourself by the speed of light and then you have energy. Believe it or not. All right? Well, thank you. Thank you all.